Hello everybody. Welcome to Eco Canada's Environmental Insider webinar series. Our session today is called Breaking into the Canadian Environmental Sector, Tips for Newcomers, and features the experiences of Hari Pemmaraju, who moved to Canada as a permanent resident in 2017 and has successfully started a new life and career in the Canadian environmental sector. My name is Hannah Williamson and I work for Eco Canada, and I'm going to be moderating this webinar today. So first of all, I just have a few housekeeping guidelines for today's session that will ensure that everybody can enjoy and participate in the webinar. All participants are muted, so please check your audio settings to ensure that you can hear us properly. If you are experiencing technical issues, please use the chat box to select Carissa Whittick, and we will do everything possible to resolve the issue. There will be dedicated time after the presentation to answer any questions that you may have. If you have questions for Hari or about today's topic, please submit them through the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen and select Carissa Whittick again. And finally, today's webinar is being recorded and it will be made available to you on demand within 24 hours of the session ending. So I just want to take a quick look at today's agenda. First of all, I will introduce you to our guest speaker, who will give you a brief overview of his background and work experience before moving to Canada. Next, Hari is going to explore some of the challenges that face newcomers in Canada and then provide some of his top tips and advice that helped him to get his foot in the door of the Canadian environmental sector. Finally, I'll then open up to the floor for questions from the audience. Please feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat box whilst the presentation is going, and we will collect them and ask them to Hari at the end of the presentation. If we do not get through all of the questions during today's session, please email us afterwards and we will forward you Hari's response. Now, before we start the presentation, I just want to find out a little bit more about our audience. To do this, I'm going to ask you some interactive questions using a poll. The way that this will work is you'll be shown a question on your screen with a multiple choice answer. You then have 30 seconds to answer the question. All responses are anonymous, so it won't show your name. It just helps us to understand who we've got on the line. So, the first question is, how long have you lived in Canada? So you should be able to see that on your screen. The multiple choice answers are there. Please select the one that is most relevant to you. And you have 30 seconds to answer. Great, just about 10 seconds left. Fantastic, so that poll's now closed. You should be able to see the results on your screen. So we have a mix of people, but lots of people that have been here less than 6 months. Some long-term people here as well, so a great mix of people on the line. Our next question, just bear with me while I get going. Our next question is, are you currently working? So this is yes or no answer. Again, 30 seconds. So just pick the answer that's most relevant to you. Great, about 10 seconds left, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. So we can see from the results there, most people on the line are currently looking for work, and some people currently in work already, and I think the information that we'll share today will be relevant to both. And then our final question, so we just want to find out a little bit more about your experience. So multiple choice, there's different options relating to the environmental sector, and if you're from outside the environmental sector currently, please select the last option. Again, 30 seconds to answer this question. Fantastic, just about 10 seconds left. Okay. So again, a real mix, lots of people from outside the environmental sector wanting to find out a bit more, and some people with current experience. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer those quick questions for me. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over and introduce our guest speaker today. So it's my pleasure to welcome Hari to the line. So Hari is currently employed as a technical consultant at the Delphi Group, where he's a specialist in the calculation and quantification of greenhouse gases and other emissions for his clients. Hari has an MSc in Environment and Sustainable Technology and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Hari also has over 5 years' experience in the Middle East as an environmental consultant before he made the move to Canada in 2017. You can find out more about Hari and his journey through, just bear with me, I believe we can still see the poll. So just bear with me and I get rid of the poll. Fantastic. So you can find out more about Hari through his recent blog, which was published on the Eco Canada website. The link is on this slide, but you can also find it on our website, www.eco.ca.
Thank you, Hannah, for that lovely introduction. Good morning, everyone. It is such a privilege to be here. Before I would begin, I would like to thank my wife, family, and friends. Without their support, I would not be here. I would also like to thank Carissa from Eco Canada, who handles funding programs, and I was in contact with her throughout my application process. She was professional and supportive throughout, and a huge moral boost to me when I was going through a challenging time. Thank you, Eco Canada. The work you are involved with makes a huge impact on families and lives of people across the world. I'm so glad that you take your work so seriously. Thank you once again. I moved to Canada in September 2017, and it took me 11 months to find the right job and in the sector that all of us are so passionate about. I would like to share my story with you all today, along with a few tips that might help you to break into the environmental sector. So let me start with going through what really worked for me. Having worked in the sector for several years on various international assignments, I knew from the start it was going to be an uphill task. It started with setting a realistic goal for myself. I gave myself 12 months to end up in a dream role. So I developed a framework which is similar to that of an environmental management plan, where you put together a plan, then you do your research, then you check your progress, and then you act on it. The planning involved knowing more about myself, more of a self-discovery of the skills that I have, and what is the value that I bring into Canada as an environmental professional. Then I looked at the job market, the current sector situation, if there's a hiring trend going on, if anyone is recruiting, or the economy is in the downturn. And then third, I also looked at developing my network because I'm new to Canada. I have no friends or family here. So what's the best way I can make professional contacts with recruiters, with fellow professionals and industry experts? And then I also thought I should develop a tracking and goal spreadsheet where I can track my progress on how many jobs I've been applying, and if my marketing tools of CVs, resumes, and cover letters, if they're effective and they're working. Now let us look into each of these themes in a bit more detail. I'm sure if you've Googled for environmental careers in Canada, Eco Canada's website would be one of the top hits on Google. I spent considerable amount of time going through their website, and I came across this really interesting subsector model, which you can see on the right. It classifies various sectors of the whole industry. Based on my experience and what I've done in the past before moving to Canada, I tried to understand where do I fit in, and I realized I did a bit of everything, but not an expert in any particular sector. Probably that's pretty much a trademark of working in South Asia and Middle East, where you become a jack of all trades, but then not an expert in any particular field. But then Canada is a land of specializations and experts, so they really value core expertise in few sectors. So after going through the subsector diagram, I went back to my CV, made a list of all the projects that I worked on, and started developing a skills map. And I came up with this infographic, what you can see on the left. For me, it made sense to play to my strengths than focus on aspects which I did not have any experience in. The next thing which I focused on is how can I transfer these skills and experience I have to the Canadian workforce. I also realized that not all the technical skills that I've developed back home, I'd be able to transfer them to Canada and they would be treated the same way. The question I asked myself is, can I be hired and in which subsector? Every job seeker out there should have a reality check with their current set of skills and how it is applicable to the current and recruiting trends. For example, I used to work on impact assessment. Probably 60% of my career I spent developing and leading technical sections of impact assessment reports for oil and gas sector. Typically in the region where I come from, these projects were led by process engineers or chemical engineers, but when you come to Canada, these such projects are led by biologists or geologists, someone with a natural science background, and then you have the engineering team supporting them. So it is a complete departure to the working model I was used to. So I got feedback from the network connections I made and also going through job descriptions. I came to a conclusion that probably I wouldn't be able to get a job in the impact assessment sector because the skills and requirements are slightly different to what was back home. I think the real focus for all of us here should be how can we market our skills acquired in one particular sector and apply them to a wide range of opportunities. For example, I have core expertise in technology assessments and impact assessments, but then now I think I've successfully transferred those to a greenhouse gas accounting role at Delphi. Uh, this would be a great starting point for anyone who's trying to break into the sector to analyze the subsectors and have a skills map and see where your greatest strengths lie. So the next one is the dream list. So after I had a skills map put out, I developed a dream list of companies that I wanted to target. This is something I developed before I even moved to Canada. It's funny here that the firm I work for right now, the Delphi Group, it's not even on the list. It's definitely a dream job, but it didn't make the list because I didn't have the right knowledge. I did not put in time to do enough research. It took me 9 months after landing in Canada to come across their work in LinkedIn, and I knew it was the right job for me and it'll be a great place to work. I definitely do not want newcomers or anyone who's trying to break into the sector going through the same process. So probably it's a wise decision to invest some time researching the sector, researching companies before you start submitting your application. We could have different approaches. The first thing is probably focusing on building marketing tools, things like CV, cover letter, maybe even subscribing to LinkedIn's premium membership, which gives you enhanced visibility to recruiters. Even a website like how I put together, where you can blow your own trumpet with no holes, do everything that's possible to stand out from the crowd and differentiate yourself. I also attended several resume workshops provided by local city services, the province, and immigrant services. It's all great feedback which helped me align my profile to the Canadian format. We can dive deeper on this on a different slide later on in the webinar. Uh, there's also research on the sector. A good source would be just going through LinkedIn profiles of people who you think are in a great role and that's the role you'd be targeting. What did they study? What was their work experience? Reach out to them, hear their story and what their journey has been. Even the Eco Canada job board is pretty much like a litmus test. It gives you the flavor of the month, who's recruiting, who's not. You'll also get into the insight into the kind of jobs that are available, subsectors that are hiring. And another thing, what you should be looking into is also LinkedIn recruiting trends. If you go to a company's page on LinkedIn, you'd figure out if they've been hiring in the past 2 years or they've been downsizing. You definitely want to join a firm which has been hiring, especially in a tough economic environment. You could also subscribe to Google Alerts on companies that you're targeting so that you get business intelligence on new projects or new acquisitions or mergers that they're going through. And another important aspect is timing. Know when the holiday season starts. I mean, there's no point trying to spend 100 hours a month in December where probably most of the people are on holiday. And also know when the peak recruitment season happens. I think for most environmental site assessment jobs, it begins around March and peaks by June because no one's hiring for soil and groundwater sampling in December when the soil is frozen. And the other important aspect is networking. I mean, everyone has their own strategy to this. There's lots of information online where you can, or tips and tools on how to build a network. I found LinkedIn to be the best tool, as well as Eco Canada's profiles page, where you can reach out to certified EPs or EPs in training and find out about their experience and how you can break into the sector. Once you're through this exercise, you should be able to answer a couple of questions. What was my previous job? How can I transfer a few skills to the new job, to my dream job? Who's the competition? What are the profiles I'm competing with for the same role? And how can I differentiate myself to the competition? What is the value proposition that you would bring into a firm, and why should they hire you? If you're able to build up these questions by going through marketing, by putting out your resume, by doing some research and making sure you time the market, I think you might have some leads. Now let us get to the next one. And it's tough to really summarize all the tools and tips which I picked up over 9 to 10 months of actively job hunting. There's a common thing which I hear from most immigrants when we meet and people are trying to break into the environmental sector or even just the job sector in Canada with no Canadian experience. The popular icebreaker is, hey, guess what? I've applied for 100 jobs, 200 jobs, 300 jobs, and did not receive a single response. That's probably my opening line with most of the people I connected with on LinkedIn. I think it's the way we connect, share our challenges, and realize that we are not alone. But in my opinion, quality trumps quantity any day. I used to submit 10 to 15 applications a week when I first started, but it didn't take me much time to realize that it didn't work out. Based on my experience, it's better to spend 4 to 8 hours on a single high quality application with a tailored cover letter and a job focused resume. It is not easy to do it, it's time consuming, but it's definitely worth it. It's one way you can differentiate yourself from the rest of the applicant pool. The 2 minute elevator pitch, I can't emphasize how important this is. If you've put together a good resume, you have a great story to tell, what you're passionate about, and if you can summarize it in 2 minutes, and I think that's a story that you should stick to when you meet recruiters, industry peers, mentors, or even anyone at the coffee shop. In the 2 minutes, you should try to make an impact that would leave the listener impressed. Uh, you should focus on what your skills would be, what are your goals, and why you should be hired. It's difficult to summarize all of this in 2 minutes, but with practice and with time, it will evolve and you'll have a version with which you can impress people. Uh, the other important thing is context. This is very difficult to put it together, especially if you do not have any Canadian experience. For example, you might be working for a firm called Reliance in Southeast Asia and say that worked on the ambient air quality monitoring for Reliance. But then for a Canadian recruiter, they wouldn't know who Reliance is. But then if you add some context in terms of worked at a refinery, the largest refinery in the world with 1 million barrels per day upstream processing, and I worked on the ambient air quality, that gives some context. So it is trying to put things in context from back home, as well as trying to understand the context of the Canadian role and the job which is on offer. And the next thing would be, yes, business cards. Business cards could be a great tool, especially in networking meetings. I carry business cards, which is like a short form of a resume where you would have your education, your experience, and make sure people know that you're looking for a job. And it's a great way to connect instead of passing on a two-page or a letter size resume. It's better to have business guides. And the most important thing is guides. I found the Harvard Business Review, the Forbes, and most importantly, this website called the Muse has the best templates for cover letters, resumes, even guidance on building your own website. My whole website, as well as my resume and cover letters, have been inspired from the work which was put together by the Muse, and then I tailored it to my own profile. And then as immigrants, we do face a lot of challenges when it comes to morale, time management, figuring out Canada, figuring out banking, housing, finances. Well, these are all difficult challenges when you're trying to uh, search for a job while also going through a survival job or working part-time. It can be difficult. I went through the process and I did it successfully, and I believe so can you. Finally, you've developed your marketing tools, you have a network, but how do you know that all the work you're putting in is effective? How do you track all your connections? How do you track all the jobs that you've applied for? I developed two trackers. I summarize the structure in the green boxes that you see there, one for networking and one for jobs I applied. Uh, and on the left, you'd see a screenshot of my archive of applications. This is sometime between October and November of 2017. So what I did is I had folders for individual dates where I applied to different companies, and I made sure that I included copies of my resume and cover letter, because you never know, you might be applying to another competitor with the same role and you can pretty much recycle your resume and cover letter. And also you could track how your resume and cover letter evolved from the time you landed in Canada or from the time you started looking for a job until the time you actually end up with one. If I go through my resume, which I started with in August 2017, probably I think it's of a different person. So there's little changes over 6 to 7 months. It make a huge impact. And also the feedback what you get from your network. How do you make sure it's aligned with the Canadian format? How do you make sure that you have the right context? On the right, I included a screenshot of all the people I reached out to in Calgary in April 2018, right before I got my break with the Delphi group. So these are all different people, professionals in the industry that I reached out to, tailored a specific in mail on LinkedIn or in email. And I made sure that I tracked it because I could always use certain sentence construction and the framework will save you time. Probably the first letter you write will take you a couple of hours, but then once you start putting out 20 to 30 letters a month, you should be doing it in less than 15 minutes. We have trackers now. I've told you about few resume tools, but what's the goal? The goal I worked with is trying to attend or have 5 to 10 coffee interviews a month. And the typical metric I had is if you want 5 to 10 coffee interviews, you have to reach out to at least 50 to 100 people. You reach out to 10 people, probably one of them is going to respond to you. And I used to reach out. That's actively what I did. I used to reach out to people every week, and then that's how I actually ended up with the job, through network and getting in feedback, knowing more of the Canadian sector as well as in Calgary and in Alberta, what's happening with policies, climate politics. It's all good context to have, and this happens only through coffee interviews or informational interviews, and there are good subjects to talk about when you actually land an interview. I think we are that's just about 25 minutes now. I hope this was useful to everyone. Uh, More than the tips and tools, I wanted to share my story about an immigrant coming in and give everyone who is trying and struggling, give some hope and inspire you not to give up. Canada needs environmental professionals, and the diversity that newcomers bring in strengthens this industry. I see many immigrants who are way better than me with better qualifications, talented. Probably all you need is a bit of a marketing strategy to help you land the right job. I think in this day and age, it's more of marketing and knowing people rather than having all the skills and being stuck to your computer. So go out there. Hopefully, this is useful and hope all of you end up with jobs soon. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Hari. Thank you for sharing your experiences today. I know it can be very difficult to move to a new country and start a new life and career. So it really is fantastic to hear your success story and also your advice, which I know will help other newcomers to make that transition. I believe that we do have some questions from the audience. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Carissa Whittick, who's going to run through those questions today.
Hi, everybody. We do have a few questions that came in that we were hoping Hari could answer, so I'll go through those now. The first question is about a method using top management as a shortcut for job searching, and they're wondering how you would reach out to them and if you've had any successful experiences with this method.
Oh yes, I totally missed it. I think I included it in my slide deck, but yes, I forgot to talk about it. So the best way is to be honest. It worked for me. I reached out to a couple of vice presidents of Canadian engineering firms, CEOs of sustainability firms in BC and Alberta. The best way is to reach them out on LinkedIn. And there are certain tools where you can figure out what the CEOs or the vice president's email might be. It's usually first name, initial, last name at company.com or xyz.com. I'm sure a bit of Google search would guide you in the right direction. And the way I reached out is if I'm reaching out to a CEO or vice president, I spent 4 to 6 hours figuring out the vision of the company in alignment with the values I have. Do I really like what they're working on? And what are the recent achievements they've done, or maybe some new projects which are really interesting, or maybe their sustainability initiative or their corporate social responsibility programs. You should be able to build a connection. This is someone who has a really busy schedule and you're asking them to take out 30 minutes. So your pitch has to be crystal clear. There should be a connection. You should have researched the firm. You should have researched the profile of the person. And there should be a very strong reason why you're talking to them and why you're reaching out to them. There are thousands of professionals in this country. Why them? What is it that attracted you to them? Another common link to use would also be university alumni associations, or probably a place where you volunteer together, or a cause with which you both share a lot of passion, and maybe a charity that both of you donate to. It could be many reasons where you need to make that personal connection. It's pretty much like fishing. I mean, and the Muse has a really good article on how to write a cover letter to senior management. Just Google those words, the Muse cover letter informational interview with top management. There's a beautiful guide on how to do it. If you want to know more about it, you can reach out to me, write to me on LinkedIn, or email me. I can send you a copy of my cover letter, which I use. Hope that answers.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, how did you finally land your job at the Delphi Group? And did you apply online or was it through referral?
It was through LinkedIn. So as I was telling you, in April, I connected with at least 20 people out of Calgary. And then you get suggested connections. If you have enough mutual connections, you get suggested connections. So my boss's name pops up. I send him a connection request, but I also add a note to him at the same time because he's a stranger. I don't know him. I told him, hey, I really like what the Delphi Group has been up to. Can we meet for coffee, or maybe we can have a 15-minute phone call? So he replies in less than 2 minutes. The deadline for a consulting position at the firm is today. Why don't you apply? And I applied, and that's how I got to know about the Delphi Group. And subsequently, what happened is all the network connections I made all of them were his mutual friends, or he worked with them in the past. And I spent a couple of hours talking to all of his colleagues and friends. So I was able to give some really good industry insights, where the sector is going, how it is going to evolve with the changing political landscape, what would happen to sustainability professionals. I was able to give some really insightful answers. I think that really helped in my interview.
That's great. Thank you. And so we have 2 more questions that we can get through. The next one is, someone is wondering how to get some volunteer experience because they feel like that will give them an opportunity to gain Canadian experience. So they've tried, just wondering some advice on how to get
The best thing is to network and ask. I mean, if you're shy and if you do not ask, you wouldn't know where the next volunteering opportunity could be. My first independent consulting thing happened at a careers fair where I met with a politician from the local Indian band, and I had my business card, which is also my resume. He liked what he saw on it, and then he said, "Hey, would you like to help me with the Word and spreadsheet documents?" I was like, "Hey, that's how I make my living," and that's my first insight into Canadian environmental work, as well as the very unique relationship we share with Indigenous and the First Nations people.
Well, that's great. And so the last question we have is from someone saying that they have 7 years experience as an environmental professional from another country, but all they're hearing from employers is that they have 0 Canadian experience. They're wondering kind of what a good response to this would be and how to approach that.
So this is all about setting the context right. So regardless of which country you worked in, for example, Newton's laws are the same in Canada or India or China. So the science of environment doesn't change. It's only the context in which we package our marketing materials which changes. You might have worked on something which is not even heard of. I mean, I used to work in a desert. There are not many deserts in Canada, and I didn't see rivers. So, and you have glaciers here, you have snow, so I have really no context to this country in whatever way possible. But in the way environmental aspects interact and way technologies, these things are universal. It's about trying to convince prospective employers that you have transferable skills that are great. On top of it, you'd also have management experience if you've been working for 7 years, managing teams and developing interns and graduates, and how you mentor people and how you communicate complex technical concepts effectively. So a lot of this thing comes down to context, and it's definitely possible. And if someone says you do not have Canadian experience, go volunteer, get some context. So in every single interview, the first question I was asked is, "Hey, how did you start working with the First Nations?" Not many Canadians get to do that. How did you do it? And that was a great conversation starter. It showed initiative on my behalf. They were really impressed with it, and I also got to get some work experience and made some money. So yeah, it's all about context. If you have any more questions, reach out to me, and probably we can go through your CV together, and then I can help you out with it.
That's great advice. Thank you. We do have one more question, and we have time for this last question. It says, how did you come around the lack of knowledge of Canadian environmental regulations, and does this matter to professionals in Canada?
There's no shortcut. I mean, if you remember when you started going through environmental regulations in your country, it's boring, it puts you to sleep, it is complicated lawyer language and jargon, which most people from a science background find it frustrating. Hey, if you're a lawyer, no offense meant, but it's great to have those documents. There's no shortcut to it. You have to start going through the regulations. There's no easy way. You have to accept the fact that you have to start from the bottom again. I used to be really efficient at my previous job. I've been with the Delphi group for 9 months, and it's been very challenging for me because I have to learn on the go, and I have to figure out all the regulations and also deliver projects on time and on budget. So there's no shortcut to it. We just need to go through it.
That's great. And so that's all the questions we have time for today. Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to pass it back to Hannah to close out today's webinar.
Thanks, Carissa, and thank you again to Hari. It's been fantastic to hear your insights and wisdom today. So before I let you all go, I hope that you all found today's session as valuable and as interesting as I did. And before you leave, I wanted to let you know about some of the other resources that Eco Canada has to offer that can support you as you continue to develop your skills and build your network as environmental professionals. So through our website, we offer a national environmental designation, we have online training courses, and we also have those discounted. We do lots of research about the environmental sector and the industry, and we publish this through news and job trends. We host networking events across Canada, which are fantastic ways to meet other environmental professionals in your city, in your area, and really do some of that networking that Hari was talking about. Our website offers lots of different webinars, so some of those are free and some of those are paid, but great topics across a really broad range. We have a job board on our website as well, which is a great place to look for new opportunities. And through Eco Canada, we also offer wage funding opportunities as well. So you can find out more information. I really recommend that you sign up for our newsletter, then you get monthly updates about these and lots of other programs that we offer through www.eco.ca. So that concludes our session today. I want to say a huge thank you from Eco Canada to everybody on the line. We really appreciate you dialing in, and I hope that I see you again on a future webinar. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a good day.